Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to work in two-point perspective. And the difference between one-point perspective versus two-point perspective is that the objects are not parallel to the picture plane. So what do we mean by that? So let's start by creating a horizon line. And there's a couple of things in terms of the kinds of drawings that we're going to be doing today that are exaggerated. They're more fantasy than reality, and I'll show you why. So when we're working in two-point perspective, we don't see a cube. So this is a cube in one-point perspective. And in one-point perspective, we see a side of the object that is parallel to the picture plane, like this. So this side of this object is parallel to the picture plane. In two-point perspective, we see a corner of an object. So we actually see a vertical line that is a corner of the object. So if I were to draw this in one-point perspective, I would point its edges to a point on my horizon line, to a vanishing point that sits on my eye level or horizon line, and it would start to look three-dimensional. But if I have an object in two-point perspective, it actually has two vanishing points. So let's say that the vanishing points of this object are here and here. Now, the reason why two-point perspective in the way that I'm drawing it for you right now is a little bit more fantasy than reality is because I am currently putting those vanishing points inside of my picture plane. So as you guys can see, they are, to the left and right. But usually our vanishing points are at 90 degrees and our picture plane's at 60 degrees. So usually our vanishing points come out of the picture plane. So they just go further out in the picture plane itself. So the kinds of objects that we're working on today and creating in two-point perspective, they are a little bit unrealistic or a little over exaggerated because we are pulling our vanishing points inside of our picture plane in order to understand perspective. But just so you know, you can almost see that this bottom part of the cube feels like it's being pulled while this one looks realistic. And it's because we're kind of forcing our vanishing points onto our picture plane. So just something to think about. So one-point perspective, the object is parallel to the picture plane. So if this is the bottom of our page, it's parallel to it. And as you can see, this one's not. That would be parallel to our picture plane. And this is a cube. We see two sides of this object, and they're pointing to two different vanishing points. So let's go a little bit further with that idea. So as we are creating objects in two-point perspective, we really want to think about how they look if they are above, below, and through our horizon line. So let's play with that. So let's make a cube that's below our horizon line, through our horizon line, and above our horizon line. So I am creating these vertical lines that are going to be where my cubes are going to be. And I'm also going to give myself two vanishing points kind of pretty far out from each other on my horizon line. And so vanishing points sit on the horizon line. We can even label them as vanishing points. And this is the right vanishing point, and this is the left vanishing point. So now that I have these three lines, I'm going to take the bottoms of each of them, and I'm going to point them to my vanishing points. I'm going to start with this cube first and just show you how that works. So both top and bottom went to the left vanishing point, and then on this side, both top and bottom are going to go to the right vanishing point. I'm going to decide how wide I want this cube to be. It can be any width that you want. So I'm going to put a vertical line on the left and on the right, describing the edges of that form. And now I'm going to take the right-hand edge and point it to the left vanishing point. right-hand edge and point it to the right vanishing point. I don't know if I said that right. Left-hand edge pointed to a right vanishing point. And all of a sudden I have a cube. And I can see the top plane of that cube and the left and right side of that cube. Now, to understand this further, we can make this cube transparent. And to do so, take the bottom of your right side and point it to the left vanishing point. Take the bottom of the left side and point it to the right vanishing point. And then make a vertical line through wherever those crossed and wherever you see that top plane. Let's kind of connect those two dots. So now you should start to see this cube as kind of like a transparent ice cube or a plexiglass cube, something that you can see the inside of. I'm going to reinforce the exterior of that cube so we see it more clearly. But now we can see all of the planes of that cube correctly going in two-point perspective. Again, we see the top plane, we see the two side planes, but now we also see the bottom plane and the interior planes of this form. So now it looks three-dimensional. So very similar thing is going to happen with the one up here. But the one that straddles our horizon line is a little bit different. Why? Well, if I take the bottom part of this vertical line, I point it to my left vanishing point. If I take the bottom of this of that line and point it to my right vanishing point, and then I do the same thing at the top, you'll see that because the line is straddling my horizon, the tops of my object are going to vanish down to the vanishing points. The bottom of my object is going to vanish up to my vanishing points. Now I want to decide how wide do I want to make this cube. I'm going to just pretend that the cube I already made is there. And I'm going to put some vertical lines indicating the left and right side of this cube. Now you should notice that we don't see either the bottom plane or the top plane, and that's because that line is straddling our eye level. But again, we can make this object transparent, which would show us the interior of that top plane and bottom plane. So let's do that. Go from the edge of the right-hand side of this cube and point it towards your left vanishing point. And the edge of your left-hand cube pointed towards the right vanishing point. Same thing on the top, right to left, left to right. And what you're going to start to see are the interior of this form. Now, sometimes two-point perspective can be a little bit tricky. I also feel like my line isn't perfect. And we've got to be careful with that and making sure that our lines are actually pointed correctly to the vanishing points, or otherwise certain things might just look a little bit funky. My biggest issue at the moment is that I want to make a vertical line that describes the interior of this cube, and it's not perfectly matching up with the bottom, which means that I did something that might be incorrect. And I feel like it has everything to do with this bottom corner. Here we go. So now I have this cube, and I can see the bottom and top planes inside of that cube. I'm going to use my red pencil and just reinforce the exterior of this cube so that we can see it a little bit better. And maybe I'll use my black pencil to reinforce the interior of that cube, showing you those interior top and bottom planes. So let's just get that line correct. Go. And then I'm going to use the black to describe these interiors. And I think that you'll see how that cube looks transparent. All right. So again, we're seeing the bottom of that interior of the cube that sits inside of it and the top that sits inside of it, which we don't see if those cubes are not transparent. And just for, finishing the demo, I'm going to finish this top one, which again is going to function a lot like the bottom. The one that I did on the bottom, I'm just going to move this a little bit so that it's more convenient for me to draw. So box above, box below, box through, box below. Now we could do so much with these boxes. They could be objects. They could be, like our architecture. They could be interior or exterior spaces. Like we can really turn these boxes into almost anything. But just talking about how we make boxes in 2-point perspective. So here's that other cube, and you can see that because this cube is above our line of sight, we're seeing its bottom plane. So how do we create some objects that are equidistant in 2-point perspective? Well, in this next drawing, we're going to create a floor, a checkered 2-point perspective floor. So let's do that really quick. We're going to make a horizon line. And then we're going to choose 2 vanishing points that are pretty far away from each other. And I'm going to bring in one vanishing point. I'm going to bring it down to the front of my paper. It doesn't need to reach the very front. I'm going to take the other vanishing point. I'm going to bring that down to this line, kind of creating a V. And again, I'm making a checkered floor. And down here is going to be my first tile. And I want my tiles to be that big. So I'm going to just choose their width to the left and right. I'm going to point one to the left vanishing point. I'm going to point one to the right vanishing point. And here, again, this is my first tile. And so again, just think about a checkered floor or a floor that is created like a ceramic floor, almost any kind of floor, but this is going to be a little square tile that is in the middle. Now what I want to do is I want to build out tiles that go up from this to create a checkered floor in this space. And I want them to be equal distance from each other. Now we can't just measure that. We can't take our ruler and just measure it out. It doesn't work that way. We have to actually use our vanishing points and do a little bit of math to figure out how to do this. But the math is really easy. Don't worry. So the first thing we need to do is we need to take this little trapezoid and we need to find its middle. How do we do that? We do that by putting basically a cross through it or taking 2 diagonal lines from both sides of that trapezoid. And wherever they cross is going to be the middle of that form. You're going to take that middle point and you're going to take it to the vanishing point. That's going to give us the middle of this entire form. So now not only do I have the left and right of this form, I have the middle edge of that form, if you guys can see that. So what I need to do now is I actually need to really think about how where that middle line is for all of these next drawings. And I also want to think about where the corner of this trapezoid is. So I want to make a line from the corner through the opposite middle. So I'm going to take a line from the corner through the opposite middle. I'm going to extend it until it hits this line. Wherever it hits this line is my next tile. Wherever it hits this line, I'm going to point it to the other vanishing point, extending it from not only here, but from the edge of that line and coming all the way to the vanishing point. So this is my first tile, and now this is my second tile. To get my third tile, I do the same thing, but with this new trapezoid from the bottom corner through its opposite middle. If I make a line, wherever it hits, that's going to be my next baseline. So it's going to be the next baseline or the next tile. Bottom corner, opposite middle. And I'm going to make 6 of these. So this is 3, Here's number 4, number 5, and number 6. So now I have one side of these rows of tiles, but I also need the other side. So let's do it again, but in the other direction. If I go back to this first tile I made and think about its center, if you guys remember, we made a cross through that. I'm going to go from the center of that tile, and I'm going to point that and get the center of this entire row. Now I'm going to go from the bottom through its opposite middle, but going in the other direction, going to the left. So wherever it hits that line, I'm going to point it towards its opposite vanishing point, getting that next tile. And same thing from this bottom through its opposite middle, wherever it hits that next line is my next vanishing point. And I'm still going to make 6 of these. So that's number 3. Bottom, oops, let's make that line correct. Bottom, opposite middle, wherever it hits that, we're going to go to the vanishing point. Bottom, opposite middle, wherever it hits that, going to go to the opposite vanishing point. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now I'm going to use my black pencil. I'm just going to fill in some of these tiles so that you can see that they look like they're in correct perspective. This first one felt like it was right the whole time. But it's really funny. Perspective is very distorting. And so it will distort how you see these squares. And it will make them thinner and thinner and more elongated the further away from you they are. And so, sometimes it really takes us filling in these forms for us to really see that they function correctly in space. So I'm going to just fill in every other one. I'm doing it pretty lightly because I'm doing it quickly. But what I want you guys to do with this assignment is I want you guys to create a checkered floor. And I also want a box that goes below the horizon line, through the horizon line, and above the horizon line. Sorry, 3 different boxes that do that, below, through, and above. And I want you to be creative. Do something with the space. It could be an interior space. It could be an exterior space. You can think about this checkered floor as a dance floor, as a garden, as again, a garage with a like your dream tools in it or something. Cool kitchen, interesting architectural space. So however you want to use it, I just want you to do something creative in that space. But now you can see that that is a floor correctly in perspective. So that is how we create equal distant objects in 2-point perspective.